The scent of fresh brewed coffee filled the kitchen as Alex sat across from their parents, hands clasped around a warm ceramic mug. The morning light slanted through the window, casting a golden glow on the worn wooden table, the same table that had witnessed every family meal, every late-night conversation, every whispered dream. Margaret, Alex's mother, sighed heavily, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "We've been struggling to keep up with the mortgage, Alex, your father and I. We just don't know how much longer we can do this." George nodded, his fingers drumming against the surface of the table in quiet frustration. "The bank's pressuring us, and we don't want to lose the house. This place, it's our home. It's where you and your sister grew up." Alex swallowed hard. The house had been everything to them, a constant, a refuge, a symbol of family. The idea of losing it felt wrong, unthinkable. What if I helped? The words left their mouth before hesitation could creep in. "I could contribute to the payments. I'm working full-time now. It wouldn't be easy, but I could make it work." Their mother's tired eyes softened with hope. "Oh, sweetheart, that would mean the world to us. You would do that." George leaned forward, his brows furrowed in disbelief. Alex nodded, resolved. "Yes, I want to keep this house and the family. If I help pay it off, it means I'll always have a place here, right?" Margaret reached across the table, squeezing Alex's hand. "Of course, you'll always have a place here. And when the mortgage is finally done, we'll make sure you're recognized for everything you've done." A smile tugged at Alex's lips, a mixture of relief and certainty. They had a purpose now. A goal. If they worked hard enough, if they sacrificed enough, they could ensure the house remained in the family. They just didn't know, in that moment, how deeply betrayal could hide behind promises. The first payment felt like an accomplishment. The 10th, a routine. By the 30th, Alex barely stopped to think about it. Life revolved around numbers, the balance in their account, the mortgage payment deadline, the extra hours they had to work to make it all fit. They picked up shifts no one wanted, stayed late when their body begged for rest, passed on dinners out and vacations their friends invited them to. Everything had a cost, and Alex had already decided what mattered most: the house. Bills came, rent increased, unexpected expenses piled up, a car repair, a dental emergency. Each time, Alex adjusted, cut back further, stretched themselves thinner. Their world became smaller, dictated by what they could afford rather than what they wanted. Meanwhile, Linda and Daniel thrived. They threw weekend barbecues, hosted family game nights, in the very house Alex was struggling to keep afloat. Linda wore new designer bags. Daniel talked about his dream of starting a business. They posted photos from ski trips and beach vacations, raising cocktails in celebration while Alex stood behind the counter of a dimly lit cafe, clocking in another shift. It wasn't resentment, at least. Not at first. Just confusion. How was it fair? How did no one else feel the weight Alex carried? One evening, after a 12-hour shift, Alex came home to find Linda and Daniel lounging in the living room, laughing as they watched a movie. A half-empty pizza box sat on the table, the scent of melted cheese and garlic filling the space. "You should join us," Linda called out, her tone light, carefree. "You work too much." Alex forced a smile, setting down their bag. "Someone has to." Daniel chuckled, taking a sip of his beer. "Hey, gotta do what you gotta do, right?" As Alex sat alone in their room that night, staring at the calendar marked with another month's payment, the doubt crept in the smallest, sharpest question. Would they ever truly be thanked for this? The shift was subtle at first, a casual remark here, a lingering glance there. Alex noticed it most in conversations with their parents. At dinner, Margaret would mention Daniel's job, how stable it was, how reliable he had become. George nodded along, praising the way Daniel handled responsibilities. It was always framed as harmless small talk, but the pattern was impossible to ignore. "He's really proving himself," their mother said one evening as they cleared the dishes. "Linda is lucky to have such a dependable husband." Alex paused, the weight of the words settling deep in their chest. Wasn't I dependable too? 7 years of payments, of sacrifice, of lost weekends and long shifts, and yet the admiration seemed reserved for someone who had never contributed to the house. Shrugging off the discomfort, Alex reminded themselves of the goal. This house belonged to the family. That's why I'm doing this. As long as they stayed focused, everything would work out. Still, the signs stacked up. When their parents spoke about the future, it became more ambiguous. "Things will settle in time," George muttered one afternoon. "We just want stability for everyone." The word stability rang in Alex's ears. Stability for whom? Their sister and Daniel. The thought felt absurd. Alex had been the pillar keeping everything upright, hadn't they? One evening, as Alex sat alone in their room sorting through bills, they overheard hushed voices from the living room. Margaret and George were talking with Daniel, their tones soft, careful. "You need to think long term," their mother was saying. "Your future, your security." "I know," Daniel answered. "I just want to make sure Linda and I have everything we need." The words felt heavier than they should have. Alex exhaled slowly, shaking off the creeping doubt. They'd been tired lately, overworked, stretched thin. Maybe they were reading too much into things. Focus? The mortgage still had payments left. There was work to do. That was what mattered. Still, for the first time, doubt curled at the edges of their certainty. Something was shifting. They just didn't know how deep the cracks ran. Default Alex stared at the screen, the numbers confirming what felt like an impossible dream. Final payment processed. Mortgage balance $0.0. For 7 years, their life had been dictated by deadlines, bills, sacrifices. Every late-night shift, every missed vacation, every dollar scraped together had led to this very moment. The house was officially paid off. Their family's home was secure. Text. Alex exhaled slowly, running a hand through their hair. A wave of exhaustion mingled with triumph. This wasn't just a financial victory. It was proof of their commitment. Proof that they had done the right thing. Bursting into the kitchen, they found their parents sitting at the worn wooden table, sipping tea. Their hearts hammered with anticipation as they held up their phone. "It's done," Alex announced, unable to keep the excitement from their voice. The mortgages finally paid off. Margaret blinked, her lips parting in surprise. George nodded slowly, setting down his cup. "Well, that's great news," their father said, offering a faint smile. "Really wonderful, sweetheart," their mother added, patting their arm absently. Alex's smile faltered. That was it. No excitement, no relief, just a few words offered with the same weight as discussing the weather. "I mean, it's huge, right?" Alex pressed, their voice wavering. 7 years of payments. "It's ours now, safe, you don't have to worry anymore." Margaret nodded. Yes, it's good to have stability." Stability, that word again. Something was wrong. Alex could feel it, a hesitation in their mother's tone, a quiet unease in their father's gaze. They swallowed hard, pushing the doubt aside. Maybe they were just tired. Maybe they hadn't processed how much this meant yet. Tonight, Alex would celebrate for themselves. They had done something incredible. What they didn't realize was that behind their parents' vacant smiles, decisions had already been made. Decisions that would soon unravel everything. The smell of roasted garlic and simmering herbs filled the dining room as the family gathered around the table. Plates were stacked high, glasses clinked softly, and laughter bubbled from across the room. On the surface, it was a familiar scene, a warm, comfortable tradition. But to Alex, something felt off. Daniel, Linda's husband, sat at the head of the table, their father's usual spot. He lounged back, exuding a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before, his voice carrying above the others as he animatedly described his plans. "So, I've been looking into contractors," Daniel said, slicing into his steak. "Might do some renovations next year. Nothing major, but no fixing up some rooms, maybe upgrading the kitchen." Alex frowned, their fork hovering above their plate. Renovations? What was he talking about? Linda hummed in agreement, resting a hand on Daniel's arm. "Yeah, it'll be good for the future. We've been talking about long-term improvements." Something twisted in Alex's chest. Since when? They glanced toward their parents. Margaret's smile was tight, forced. George focused on his food, barely engaging. The unease stirred deeper. So, Alex started cautiously, setting their fork down. "Now that the mortgage is paid off, what's the plan for the house?" The question felt heavy in the air. Margaret exchanged a fleeting glance with George, her fingers curling around her napkin. "Well," she began slowly, "we haven't fully decided." Daniel chuckled. "Come on, Margaret, we've talked about it plenty." Alex's stomach nodded. "What does that mean?" Alex pressed. Margaret sighed. "We just want stability for the family, for the future." There was that word again, stability. Alex looked between them, the weight of the moment pressing against their ribs. The house was supposed to be secure. It was supposed to be theirs, too. So why did it suddenly feel like it belonged to someone else? The voices drifted in from the living room, low, measured tones just beyond Alex's bedroom door. It wasn't unusual for their parents to have quiet conversations at night, but something about the weight of this one made Alex pause. They hadn't been able to shake the unease from dinner. Daniel's confidence, their mother's hesitation, the way their father had avoided eye contact. Something wasn't right. Alex stepped closer, the hallway dim in the evening glow. "I just think it's the best choice," Daniel was saying, his voice carrying easily. "It keeps everything in the family, right? Linda and I are stable. We can take care of it." Margaret sighed. "Yes, and you'll make good use of it. We're just glad everything is finally settled." Settled. Alex's blood ran cold. George cleared his throat. "It was officially signed over today, so it's done." The words hit like a slow, crushing weight. Signed over, today. Their chests tightened, breath coming short and shallow. This had to be a mistake. They had spent years, lost weekends, missed opportunities, sacrificed nearly everything for this house only, for their parents to give it away. To him, the world blurred for a moment, the edges of reality sharpening into something far too cruel. Alex stepped forward, the creak of the floorboards betraying their presence. The conversation stopped instantly. Margaret turned, startled, her face pale. "Alex, what did you just say?" Alex's voice was quiet, but it carried enough force to make their father straighten in his chair. Their mother hesitated. "Sweetheart, you signed the house over." Alex felt the tremor in their voice. Say it so I know I'm not imagining this nightmare." George nodded once, slowly. "Yes." Alex's stomach lurched. No discussion, no warning, no consideration. Everything they had given, everything they had built, the security, the sacrifices meant nothing. Linda entered from the hallway, eyes wide. She knew. Daniel leaned back, completely unfazed, watching Alex like an observer of a trivial moment. "We just thought," Margaret began. Alex shook their head, stepping back. "You didn't think at all?" And suddenly, The house, their home, felt like a place they had never truly belonged. Alex's pulse thundered as they stood in the living room, fists clenched at their sides. Margaret and George sat on the couch, their expressions tight with unease, while Linda lingered near the doorway, eyes darting between them and Daniel. "You gave away the house," Alex said, voice trembling with restrained anger. "After everything, after 7 years of sacrifices, and you didn't even tell me." Margaret exhaled sharply. "Alex, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Their voice rose, their frustration spilling over. "I worked for this. I paid for this." I thought they swallowed hard, their chest tightening. "I thought it meant something." George leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "It does mean something. The house was always meant to stay in the family." Alex let out a hollow laugh. "Right, but apparently I don't count as family." Linda shifted uncomfortably, casting a glance at Daniel, who remained maddeningly calm, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "Sweetheart," Margaret started cautiously, "you were helping out. We never meant for you to think." Alex's breath caught. "Helping out. You never meant for me to think what?" They took a step forward, their voice dangerously quiet. "That it was mine too. That my sacrifices mattered. That I wasn't just a glorified bank account for this family." Margaret flinched. George sighed. "We just thought this was the best way to keep things stable." There was that word again. Stable. Alex laughed, but it was bitter, sharp. Stable for who? Because it sure as hell wasn't for me. Silence hung heavy between them. Alex looked between their parents, between Linda and Daniel, faces that should have felt familiar, warm, safe. Instead, they looked like strangers. Daniel finally spoke, voice smooth and deliberate. "I know this is hard to hear, Alex, but you'll be fine. You have your own life to focus on now." Alex's jaw tightened. Their own life? Wasn't this supposed to be part of it? Their fingers curled into fists. It was never about fairness. It was never about them. And in that moment, standing in the house they had sacrificed everything for, Alex realized one undeniable truth. They had never truly belonged here. Alex sat in the dim glow of their childhood bedroom, the walls surrounding them steeped in memories that felt different now, tainted, hollow. The bed where they had once collapsed after long shifts, believing they were building something worthwhile. The window where they had watched summer thunderstorms roll in, feeling safe within these walls. The hallway where their mother had once squeezed their hand and whispered, "This house will always be yours, sweetheart." A lie. It had all been a lie. Their fingers traced the edge of the desk, where faded pencil marks still etched their younger selves' dream-scribbled notes, college applications, plans to one day renovate the place together. They had imagined repainting the living room, fixing the creaky staircase, planting a garden in the backyard, their home. Except now, when they pictured those things, they saw Daniel standing in the doorway, saw Linda laughing beside him, saw their parents nodding in approval, as if Alex had never existed. The betrayal settled deeper. They could still hear their father's voice. The house was always meant to stay in the family. But what did family even mean? Because it clearly hadn't included them. A dull ache spread in their chest. Was it their fault? Had they misread everything? Had they given too much, expected too much, assumed that sacrifice meant belonging? Alex squeezed their eyes shut, willing the memories to go quiet, to lose their weight. But they wouldn't, because this wasn't just a loss. It was the shattering of everything they had believed. Alex sat across from Mr. Patel, the lawyer their friend Elena had recommended. The office smelled of leather and old books, the air thick with quiet authority. The papers spread before them felt heavier than they should. Was there any way to fight back? So, let me get this straight, Mr. Patel said, adjusting his glasses. You made the mortgage payments for 7 years, but the house was officially in your parents' name the whole time. Alex swallowed hard. Yes, I trusted them. We never put anything in writing. The lawyer sighed, tapping his fingers against the desk. That makes it difficult. Difficult, not impossible. There could be a case for unjust enrichment, he continued. If you can prove that your payments weren't simply gifts, but an expectation of ownership, there may be grounds to challenge the transfer. Alex clenched their jaw. Proof? That was the problem. Everything had been built on trust. Alina had been the first to push for legal action. You can't just let this happen, she had said, fire in her voice. They used you. You deserve justice. Their coworker Ryan had a different take. Do you really want to go through a legal battle with your family? It might cost more than it's worth. Worth? What was justice worth? The papers blurred in Alex's vision. The house had been their purpose for so long, but fighting meant facing their family in court. Was it about winning or about walking away? And for the first time, Alex truly didn't know what came next. The silence between Alex and their parents stretched longer with each passing day. Conversations became transactional, short, clipped words exchanged only when necessary. Margaret still sent the occasional text, asking if they had eaten, if they were doing okay, but Alex barely responded. They weren't okay. And their parents knew that. They just didn't know how to fix it. The house stood unchanged, yet everything about it felt different now. Its walls once held warmth, laughter, late-night stories shared at the kitchen table. Now, it was just a structure, a place that belonged to someone else. Linda tried to reach out a few times. Alex, I know you're upset, she had said, voice hesitant over the phone. But this wasn't personal. Alex had laughed bitterly, hollowly. It was never not personal. Daniel didn't bother pretending. He carried himself with quiet triumph whenever Alex saw him, as though settling into ownership had never been in question, as if it had been inevitable. Each interaction with their parents only widened the space between them. Alex saw the guilt in their mother's eyes, heard the regret in their father's sighs, but neither of them fixed it. Neither of them had fought for Alex when it mattered. And now, there was nothing left to fight for. Alex stood at the edge of a quiet apartment balcony, staring out at the city beyond. The skyline stretched wide, unfamiliar, untethered, full of possibilities they had never truly considered. For so long, their identity had been tied to that house, to its walls, its history, its promise of permanence. But permanence was an illusion. The house had never really been theirs. Their phone buzzed with a message from Alina. Did you think about it? That place we saw yesterday? The apartment? Alex glanced at the listing again, a modest but modern space, something entirely their own. The idea had started as a distant thought, then a tentative possibility, but now it felt right. They no longer needed their parents' approval. No longer needed to fight for something that had never truly belonged to them. They could build their own life, their own home. For the first time in months, Alex felt something like relief. The truth never came in one clean revelation. It unraveled slowly. Piece by piece, like a thread being pulled from an old sweater. Alex hadn't planned to dig deeper. They had been ready to walk away, ready to let go of the fight. But then whispers surfaced, a comment from an old neighbor, a passing remark from their aunt, a slip from their father's accountant. Daniel worked things out for them, someone said offhandedly. Worked things out. The words stuck in Alex's mind, festering. What did that mean? Had the decision to sign over the house really been their parents' choice, or had someone pushed them? It didn't take long to uncover more. Daniel had connections, legal contacts, financial advisors, people who had quietly rearranged things behind the scenes. The mortgage payments Alex had made had been rerouted not directly to their parents, but absorbed into a restructuring of family assets, all tying neatly back to Daniel's control. Alex felt sick. They hadn't just been left out of the decision, they had been erased from it entirely. Linda, when confronted, had faltered. I didn't know the details, she murmured. Daniel handled most of it. He said it was the best way. The best way. Margaret had looked away when Alex demanded answers. We thought it was what made the most sense, she had whispered. But there was hesitation in her voice. She knew it had been wrong. George had sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. You wouldn't have wanted to get caught up in all the financial logistics anyway, he said dismissively, as if that justified taking away everything Alex had built. Alex stared at their parents, at their sister, at the people who had shaped their childhood and, suddenly, they saw them differently, not just as a family, but as people who had made choices that had taken something from them. And not one of them had fought to stop it. The text came late in the evening. Simple, hesitant message from Linda. Can we talk, please? Alex stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. They had barely spoken to their sister since everything fell apart. The idea of hearing her voice, of sitting across from her and listening to whatever excuse she had to offer, made their stomach twist. But something in them needed to know. The coffee shop was quiet when Linda arrived. Sliding into the seat across from Alex, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. I know you're angry, she started, voice soft, eyes pleading. I should have said something sooner. Alex leaned back, crossing their arms. Why didn't you? Linda winced. It wasn't like that. I didn't plan for any of this. I just let it happen. She let it happen, like everyone else. I told myself it wasn't really my decision, she continued, fiddling with the lid of her coffee. Daniel handled everything. Mom and Dad thought it was the best way to keep things simple. I didn't fight for you, Alex scoffed. She didn't fight for them. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words barely touched the wound. Later that night, their mother called. The hesitation in her voice was familiar, a lingering guilt that clung to her every word. We want to make things right, sweetheart, Margaret said carefully. We know this hurt you. We were thinking, maybe we could help financially, give you something to start fresh. Start fresh. Alex spit back a bitter laugh. They thought money could erase 7 years of betrayal. Their father chimed in, voice heavy with weariness. We don't want to lose you over this. But they already had. Alex sighed, staring at the ceiling, at the cracks in the plaster that suddenly felt too familiar. Money wasn't what they wanted. They had wanted respect, trust, a place that had truly been theirs. And no amount of compensation could buy that back. For weeks, Alex had wrestled with the choice, fight for justice or let go. The legal battle was possible, but exhausting. They could demand what was owed, make their family acknowledge the betrayal, make them pay. But would winning back a house filled with fractured memories feel like victory? Their phone buzzed. A message from Alina. Did you sign the lease? Let's go celebrate. Alex exhaled slowly, fingers tightening around their keys. Their own home. Their own future. With one final glance at the house that had shaped them, shattered them, they turned away. And this time, they weren't leaving in defeat. They were walking forward, toward something new. The sun poured through the windows of Alex's new apartment, bathing the space in soft morning light. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, but it was theirs. For the first time in years, they felt untethered from the past. It had taken time, months of wrestling with disappointment, grief, and anger. But as they stood in the doorway, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, they realized something profound. They had survived not just the betrayal, but the realization that their worth was never tied to that house. Their parents would go on with their lives. Linda and Daniel would build their future in the home Alex once fought for. That chapter was closed. But Alex had something better, a fresh start, one built on their own terms. Alina arrived later that afternoon, bringing takeout and a bottle of cheap wine. "You did it," she said, grinning. Alex smirked. "Yeah, I did. A new place, a new life, an entirely new version of themselves." And for the first time in years, the future felt wide open.